If you examine the reports emerging from Washington this morning, you might believe you're witnessing merely another commercial disagreement, another irate post, another warning. But if you observe what's occurring in Ottawa, if you glance at the documents on Mark Carney's desk at this moment, you recognize this is entirely different. This isn't a disagreement. It's a separation. Donald Trump sought to trap Canada. He figured he could intimidate his northern neighbor into yielding like he does with everybody else. He figured the traditional strategy would succeed. But Mark Carney didn't flinch. He didn't yell. He didn't bargain. He simply grasped a mechanism that no Canadian prime minister has ever ventured to activate. And when he triggered it, the foundation collapsed beneath the White House. In the coming few minutes, I'm going to reveal precisely what transformed last night. I'm going to explain why the markets are displaying alarms, why Trump is abruptly silent regarding success, and why the cost of the device in your hand is set to increase due to an error committed in the Oval Office. You are observing history transform, and the United States is no longer steering the vehicle. Let's eliminate the distractions and examine the unvarnished details of what transpired during the previous 12 hours. It commenced at 2 a.m. Eastern. Donald Trump, annoyed by Canada's unwillingness to compromise on border autonomy and digital taxation rules, pressed send on an order that astonished his own consultants. He proclaimed a flat 25% compliance duty on each individual item passing the Canadian border. Oil, timber, automobiles, aluminum, all of it. His objective was straightforward: panic. He intended to plummet the Canadian dollar, trigger a surge on the banks, and compel Carney to plead for a session at Mar-a-Lago by midday. That was the scheme. That's invariably the scheme. Generate turmoil, then market the remedy. But this is where the narrative reversed. At 8 a.m., Mark Carney proceeded to the lectern in Ottawa. There was no alarm in his gaze. There was no yelling. He didn't even reference the duty. Instead, he proclaimed the implementation of something termed the Strategic Resource Protocol. Essentially, Canada just closed the valve, not the oil valve. That's too complicated. He closed the future. Carney declared that starting right away, Canada is rerouting its vital mineral shipments, lithium, cobalt, uranium, away from U.S. supply networks and into secured 10-year exclusive deals with the European Union and Japan. He didn't contest the duty, he just rendered it insignificant. He informed the United States, if you refuse to trade equitably, we will take the foundational components of the 21st century economy and offer them to your rivals. And the repercussions struck Washington right away. This wasn't a trade conflict maneuver. This was a geopolitical stalemate. You must view the evidence to comprehend the extent of this error by Trump, because the media will claim this involves both parties. It does not involve both parties. One party hurled a stone, the other party unleashed a mountain. Evidence item 1, the market seizure. Examine the graphs from the starting bell on Wall Street today. Especially, examine the technology field and the automotive field. Ford, GM, Tesla, Apple. They didn't decline, they plunged. Why? Because these firms understand what you may not understand. Canada isn't merely a friendly neighbor. Canada is the storage area for American production. When Carney proclaimed that essential minerals were being allocated to trustworthy partners, code for not Trump, algorithms on Wall Street promptly computed the expense. If U.S. firms must procure their battery materials from China or Africa rather than Canada, their expenses increase by 30, possibly 40%. The market grasped in seconds what Trump hasn't grasped in 4 years. You require Canada more than Canada requires you. Evidence item 2, the Port of Vancouver details. We possess satellite details and shipping records from the Port of Vancouver from merely 3 hours ago. Typically, you observe a vast stream of merchandise heading south via rail and truck into Washington state. Today, we are observing a reallocation. Accounts are emerging of freight assignments being modified. Vessels that were designated for possible U.S. delivery are being retained. This is the Strategic Resource Protocol operating. It's not a blockade. That's an act of war. It's an assessment. It's bureaucratic jujitsu. Carney is applying the very same national security rationale Trump applies. But he's applying it to lawfully suspend deliveries of crucial items to the U.S. Evidence item 3, the phone call revelations. Sources within the State Department are disclosing like a strainer right now. Reportedly, there was an urgent call from the U.S. Commerce Secretary to Ottawa at 9:30 a.m. They sought to determine if the mineral suspension encompassed defense contractors. The reply from Ottawa: "We are presently evaluating all export licenses to guarantee they correspond with our national priorities." That is diplomatic terminology for "we'll respond when we choose." Do you grasp the shift in authority here? Normally, it's the U.S. issuing the warnings and Canada reviewing the details. Today, the White House is the one anxious on the phone line, awaiting an operator to respond. Evidence item 4, the combined announcement. And this is the decisive blow. While Trump was sharing furious messages about unappreciative Canada, a combined announcement was published from Brussels and Ottawa. The president of the European Commission and Mark Carney published a statement of vital partnership. They didn't just exchange handshakes. They endorsed a structure that merges Canada's resource network with Europe's manufacturing foundation. This demonstrates Carney had this arranged. He didn't draft this plan this morning. He has been anticipating Trump to commit a blunder. He's been concealing this tool beneath the desk, awaiting the instant Trump attempted to overstep the boundary. Trump overstepped it, and now the connection is ablaze. You must consider why Trump is unraveling. You can observe it in the rate of the posts. You can observe it in the chaotic press sessions where the press secretary declines to address inquiries about supply networks. Trump is forfeiting control because he is a participant who only knows one approach: leverage. His whole perspective is founded on the notion that America is the largest space in the building, so everyone must heed him. He believes leverage concerns scale. He believes because the U.S. economy is 10 times larger than Canada's, he prevails automatically. But that's 1980s reasoning. That's real estate developer reasoning. In the contemporary world, leverage isn't concerning scale. It's concerning bottlenecks. Trump fails to comprehend that he just provided Carney the ethical superiority and the financial activator simultaneously. By warning of a 25% duty, Trump violated the USMCA Pact. He violated the regulations. This granted Carney the lawful authority to counter. But rather than merely imposing duties on bourbon or ketchup, which is what Trump anticipated, Carney targeted the bottleneck. Trump is impulsive. He awakens, views TV, becomes angry, and releases a directive. He presumes the opposing side will freak out. But what occurs when the opposing side doesn't freak out? What occurs when the opposing side is guided by a person who managed the Bank of England, a person who comprehends international finance superior to how Trump comprehends his own golf properties? Carney isn't performing for the audience. He's performing for the framework. Trump is forfeiting control because the commercial elite in America, the contributors, the executives, the plant proprietors are opposing him. They are contacting the White House at this moment, yelling. They are stating, "You cannot wage a trade conflict with Canada. We share an electricity network. We share pipelines. We share auto facilities." Trump believed he was disciplining an underling. Instead, he just inserted a wrench into his own machinery. And now that the machinery is emitting smoke, he lacks knowledge of how to repair it because he dismissed all the technicians. He's alone. The Europeans are chuckling, the Canadians are remaining firm, and the American voter is set to question why their food expenses and their fuel expenses just increased once more. We must discuss Mark Carney. Regardless of your opinion on his politics, you must respect the implementation. This is not how Canadian prime ministers typically act. Traditionally, the Canadian approach has been maintain a low profile, grin, and wish the Americans overlook us. Carney has destroyed that approach. His action is distinct because it is uneven. Even warfare is you strike me, I strike you. You impose a duty on my steel, I impose a duty on your bourbon. That's a defeating match for Canada because the U.S. is larger. Canada exhausts faces to strike. Carney chose uneven. He stated, "You impose a duty on my steel. Okay, I will deprive your technology field." He shifted the dispute to an area where Canada holds the edge. Canada possesses the materials the world requires for the environmental shift. The U.S. is eager for these materials to rival China. By securing those materials aside, Carney is striking Trump where he is most vulnerable. It's also distinct because it's subdued. Observe the manner. Trump is noisy, Carney is quiet. Trump employs all caps. Carney employs agreements. There is a frightening expertise to what Ottawa is performing. They aren't igniting flags. They aren't organizing gatherings. They are just subtly redirecting the infrastructure of the global economy to circumvent the United States. This is a message to the world. Carney is informing Europe, Japan, and the UK. America is unpredictable. We are reliable. Conduct business with us. He is placing Canada not as America's younger sibling, but as the mature option. He is wagering that the world is weary of the disorder emanating from Washington. And observing the markets today, he's correct. He's converting stress into strength. He's accepting Trump's hostility and utilizing it as evidence that Canada requires independence. He's resolving Canada's long-standing issue of excessive dependence on the U.S. by employing Trump as the justification to detach. It's ingenious and it's risky. So what does this signify for you? Perhaps you're located in Ohio or Texas, or perhaps you're viewing this from Toronto or Calgary. Why does this impact your existence? If you are in the United States, this is an alert. The period of inexpensive, simple entry to Canadian materials is finished. Trump just terminated it. This signifies costs are going to escalate, not solely for vehicles, but for residences. Timber originates from Canada. For power, oil originates from Canada. For nourishment, fertilizer originates from Canada. If this impasse persists, the inflation that Trump vowed to resolve is going to return forcefully, propelled by supply disruptions from the north. But the larger consequence is regarding protection. For 70 years, the U.S. and Canada have been essentially the identical protection area. NORAD, the Boundary Intelligence Exchange. If Carney is prepared to sever economic connections, how extensive does this extend? Are we considering a future where Canada ceases exchanging intelligence, where the northern boundary turns into a rigid boundary? For Canadians, this is the decisive instant. This is the instant where you discover if your nation is independent or if it's a dependent territory. Carney is risking everything that Canada can support itself. If he falters, the Canadian economy collapses. If he triumphs, Canada appears as a genuine intermediate authority separate from Washington. And worldwide, this indicates the conclusion of the North American stronghold. The landmass is fracturing. Investors perceive it. Commanders perceive it. When you shatter the confidence between the U.S. and Canada, you shatter the basis of Western protection. And Trump is wielding a mallet to that basis because he believes it makes him appear strong. There was an instant amid the press meeting that encapsulated all. A journalist questioned Carney, "Mr. Prime Minister, aren't you fearful of inciting the president? What if he seals the boundary entirely?" Carney paused. He removed his glasses. He gazed straight into the camera, not at the journalist, but at the lens. And he stated very softly, "The boundary is a mark on a chart. The economy is a network of confidence. The president can seal the mark, but he has already shattered the confidence. We are merely proceeding." He replaced his glasses and departed. That's the instant. We are merely proceeding. It wasn't a warning. It was a farewell. Now we venture into the peril area because Trump lacks understanding of how to fail. Scenario A, the most probable result. Trump intensifies. He fumes. He proclaims penalties on specific Canadian authorities. He attempts to prohibit Canadian winter visitors from Florida. It becomes trivial, but the markets compel his action. The S&P 500 falls another 5%, and the contributors compel him to create exceptions to his duties. He asserts triumph, stating he corrected the arrangement, but discreetly the duties are eliminated. But the harm is accomplished. Canada retains its fresh agreements with Europe. Scenario B, intensification. This is the frightening one. Trump announces a national crisis. He commands the confiscation of Canadian holdings in the U.S. or attempts to compulsorily examine every vehicle. The boundary congests, food decays in trailers, auto facilities in Michigan cease within 48 hours because they lack components. We observe dismissals in the U.S. Midwest. Carney counters by immobilizing U.S. tech holdings in Canada. It turns into a complete economic freeze. Scenario C, the turnaround. Trump recognizes he entered a snare. He dismisses a fall guy consultant, accuses the hidden government for the duty concept, and attempts to shift to assaulting China or Mexico instead, feigning the Canada conflict never occurred. But here is the issue with scenario C. You can't unsound the alarm. Carney isn't going to discard those agreements with Europe simply because Trump alters his opinion. The transformation has occurred. Canada has begun gazing east and west rather than solely south. This is the segment where leaders generally de-escalate. But Trump doesn't perform de-escalation, and Carney isn't retreating. We are observing a contest of nerve between an earth mover and a rapid transit. The earth mover is large, but the transit possesses velocity. And at this moment, the transit is not decelerating. This is not merely reports. This is the reconfiguration of the Western realm. Canada has concluded that the expense of being America's ally is too steep under Donald Trump, and the U.S. is set to discover precisely how costly it is to have Canada as an adversary. Carney utilized the option everyone dreaded to utilize. He refused. Now the inquiry is, will Trump incinerate the structure because he can't achieve his desire? Or have we ultimately observed the boundary of his authority? I desire to learn what you believe. Is Mark Carney safeguarding Canada's tomorrow, or is he risking a bet that's going to ruin the Canadian economy? Is Trump powerful, or did he just get outperformed? Share your opinion in the comments. I'm reviewing them. And hear this. If you desire to learn what transpires when the markets commence tomorrow, and if you desire the developments that the conventional news is too frightened to report, press that subscribe option. The world is transforming rapidly. Don't become outdated. I'll encounter you in the subsequent one.